Feedback. Okay, so what is feedback? The Oxford English Dictionary defines feedback as information about reactions to a product, a person's performance of a task, etc., which is used as a basis for improvement. The modification or control of a process or system by its results or effects, for example, in a biochemical pathway or behavioural response. So if we look at formative feedback is anything, any information, process or activity which affords or accelerates student learning based on comments relating to either formative assessment or summative assessment activity. This HEA definition recognises the summative assessment can also be a form of formative feedback. So feedback can raise the students' consciousness of the strengths and weaknesses of their work. And fundamentally, this is not only one part of what we're trying to do. So if we're providing information on the strengths and weaknesses of their work, then that also helps the student to understand what we think the strengths and weaknesses of their work are, as opposed to what they think they are. Feedback should boost the student's motivation, confidence and self-concept regarding personal strengths and abilities. So if we provide feedback which just gives information on the strengths and weaknesses, that's very retrospective, that's very backwards looking. Instead we should be providing feedback as much as possible that's forwards looking. So once you've told them about their strengths and weaknesses, then you can build their motivation and their confidence by explaining to them what they can do to about those strengths and weaknesses. So even if they've done very well, you can tell them what further they can do to improve. Even if they've done very poorly, you can they may feel a loss of motivation if they just refined information about weaknesses in their work. Explaining to them where they can go to find out how to improve and what they can do to improve is much more motivating and much more emboldening to the student to help them to understand and improve their work. So it gives them some confidence that they're not just poor, but they haven't performed well in this assessment, and then this is what they can do about it. Feedback should provide guidance on areas of further development of skills and enhancement of work. Again, this needs to be something that should be done at any level. Enhance students' own judgment, understanding of assessment criteria and ability to self-audit their own work. And so all too often assessment and the provision of feedback is something that's done to the student, and so there's a power imbalance there, and really it should be something that is done with the students, and so the student should be much more motivated, much more empowered within the assessment and feedback process, and so there should be a lot more encouragement either through the structuring of the feedback and the phrasing, or through practices in learning and teaching to promote the students to take ownership of and control of the auditing of their own work. This is ideal because it can help to students to self-audit their own work, but also there's an awful lot of sort of tacit knowledge that staff can assume that students have in the understanding of the assessment criteria, so trying to use feedback which develops understanding through explanations can help them to understand the assessment criteria and what the staff think is is good performance and demonstrate good understanding, and what is good understanding. And all too often the students' understanding of that can be quite different, and so trying to get to a point where the students are not only proactively self-auditing their own work, but they actually truly understand the assessment criteria they're auditing it against and what good performance looks like, can mean that you get much better work out of the students the next time around. And when you're going through that process, that formative feedback process, then you need to make it very clear to the students that you're giving them feedback then, in order to understand that they're receiving feedback, and so it's not just something that's dealt out passively, so dealt to them and they sit in receive passively at the end of their module when they get their final feedback on their final assignment. Feedback should promote metacognition by encouraging students' reflection and awareness of the learning processes involved in an assessment. So all too often, again, the students do the assessment, but they very often miss the point in the process of doing the assessment. And so it's a hardship that they have to go through at the end of the module, an academic process which is done to them, or they have to do in order to be able to tick off that particular module. But the learning process is much more than just sort of you filling up their knowledge bucket in the subject area of that particular topic. And it's trying to get the message across to the students that in carrying out the assessment, you're getting them to engage with the subject matter which they've been learning. You're getting them to assimilate it, digest it, you're getting them to perform various cognitive processes using that subject matter, and you're also fostering all sorts of things that we sort of teach by stealth in higher education, such as self-management, taking control of learning, self-auditing, reflective practice. We get the students to engage with, and so trying to just highlight to the students, almost with a big arrow, to say this is what's going on when you're doing your assessment, can help the students engage much more effectively with the process. And finally, feedback and formative feedback should enable tutors to realign the teaching content to the learner needs and promote effective dialogue between teachers and students. And so should if we've got a discussion-based approach, particularly to formative feedback, then that can help the tutor to understand what the student is not understanding, but also to help them to understand how they can put that information across better and design the teaching better in order to be able to deliver for their students. And that might be specific to a particular student, it might be specific to a particular cohort, and you'll have to adapt your process between different cohorts. So, as you said, a lot of the time students don't recognise when they're receiving feedback. I mean, this could be in a variety of formats for formative feedback, such as printed responses on exercises or automatically generated answers to quizzes or questions online, covering topics in live lectures or seminars, comments made during those ones, or even comments made in a meeting with a student in between lectures or live teaching sessions, either through email or response to discussion boards or similar. It could maybe through reference to assessed work within a lecture, which could be feed forward from previous assessments, taking them with appropriate permissions and showing what you thought a good assessment looked like and why you thought it was good. And it can be general comments made on the virtual learning environment in a variety of different situations. So sometimes you almost have to wear a t-shirt to set with the sign on it saying you are receiving formative feedback now, because students also often consider that the only feedback that they receive is the comments they get on their summative assessment at the end of their learning. So formative feedback should encourage self-assessment of work prior to submission, and this is our real goal, to get the students to understand what good work looks like, what the assignment is looking for, and then to understand the academic terminology which that assignment or a marking criteria or rubric is using, and then to check their own work, to self-audit their work against that prior to submission. This can greatly improve what you get submitted. It can encourage peer assessment. It should encourage peer assessment of work, formative feedback prior to submission. And so, if you can get peer assessment systems working, that's ideal, because that enables the student to get different perspectives on their work rather than just their own at different points in time. But it can also, for the people doing the assessment and the people receiving it, promote greater engagement with the assignment criteria and the marking criteria, and a level of reflection and metacognition where they're considering about the way in which they've approached their work, but also can encourage them to reflect on their own work when they're giving feedback to others and how they've performed against this. It can explore student misunderstandings. So formative feedback is very good for trying to understand where the sense making is occurring. And so having that dialogue with the student in the class, between the class and the tutor, can help pick up elements of academic slang and assumed knowledge. Can help to the lecturer to understand what the student is understanding from the assignment requirements and to help the student understand what the requirements of the assignment are asking for. And rubrics are very effective in this, but also the terminology used within rubrics in order to ensure that there aren't any sort of assumed understandings there.